Hey, how's it going? Jim Alexander here with The Real Talker. Today I am reviewing and talking about Land. Land. Yes, that's the name of the movie, Land. It sounds kind of funny to me. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the movie isn't technically about land, but it just seems so. I'm knocking things over from my excitement about talking about land. But I am going to tell you guys about the plot of the film, what's really happening. The acting, how did the acting go? The directing of it, and kind of the cinematography. Going to touch up on that, observations and takeaways from the film, and of course give you the results of should you see it or not. Should you see this film? And probably towards the end, I'm going to maybe share some spoilers. So for those of you who want to stick around for that, I'll mention some things and my thoughts on that, what actually happens in Land. But before we get into all that, check out the trailer for the film. This is Land.
I'm here because I choose to be.
All right, what did you think of Land? Okay, I promise to stop repeating that. But that's the movie in itself. So as you can see, Robin Wright is definitely the centerpiece of this film. Damien Bashir, also a big character, plays a big character in this film. And yeah, so we're going to delve into their performances and how did this film overall turned out, because there's a lot to really talk about in a sense, even though there isn't much that technically happened. But okay, let's delve into it. I'm ready to talk about this movie from the start. So the plot is about a woman named Edie who seemingly we get introduced to her early on. She's just appearing in this small town, a mountain town in a sense. We find out it's Wyoming through some of her kind of giveaways that she gives with when she's looking at different paperwork and all. So let's say it's Wyoming. It believed to be, it looks like Wyoming, a small town in Wyoming. But right away from the get-go, she's like tossing away her cell phone into the garbage. So something's happened, right? From a woman called Emma, who's like calling her constantly. We later find out that that's her sister. So she gets driven up basically to like up a mountain into this remote little shack, this wooden shack that I wouldn't even want to stay a night in. It looks like a bad version of a cabin, like a abandoned cabin. How about that? And she tells the guy that brings her up there to introduce her, there's nothing around. Literally, I think they did mention that there's Native Americans living on that land, hence the name of the movie, I guess. And she's the only one there. So this woman, we find out quickly, is abandoning her life, throws away her cell phone. She tells this man who brings her up to this home to take her car and sell it. So she wants someone to take away from her car. He urges her against that because you would need a car to go to town, because this is like way up on the mountain, get some food, maybe in case of any emergency, it'd be kind of nice to have a car, because how do you get down from this mountain walking? And she just doesn't want it. So she clearly wants to be isolated from society. Then we notice after a near fatal encounter, because, hey, you just run out of supplies, right? And if there's bears coming around your yard, you will eventually be raided by some wild animal, which happens to her, and she's left for dead. Thankfully, there's a man named Miguel, a local from the town, that finds her with a nurse, saves her, brings her back to life, and they form a friendship, a genuine kind of friendship. And that's kind of the storyline aspect of this movie. Do not be alarmed. I just turned up my light so you guys can see me better if you want to see me, for that matters. But now that we have the basic backstory out of the way, the plot, what's kind of going on here. Now, what were the actors? I mean, the actors are the center of this movie in so many ways. Robin Wright's character and Damien Bashir. How did they do? I mean, because they're kind of the only two that really matter in this film. Robin Wright gives a really good performance. Like, I have no issues with her performance in this film. I think she doesn't speak much. It's not as much heavy on dialogue. It's more the physicality. It's more kind of, she shows instead of tells, in that way. It's more of a subtle performance in that manner. It's not subtle when you watch at it because it's kind of extreme. Like, there's a variation of emotions and just feeling of anguish and completely someone who's beat down to the core in a lot of ways. And she does a really good job just showing that and bring it to life. So there's no instance where you're like, oh, she's overacting or I don't believe any of this. I think she does a good job of portraying what her character is going through. So no problem with Robin Wright's acting. I think she did a fine job. Same for Damien Bashir, who plays Miguel, the helping friend. He's got this cool, friendly aura to him, really. I don't know if it's the character or just his acting in a sense where you just kind of feel good around him or watching him. He's a calming presence. And I thought his character Miguel was a calming presence for Edie in the film. So I thought that aspect totally worked, and they made it realistic. And there's something about it that having Damien Bashir's take on Miguel was very authentic, raw, and also subtly calming. How about that? So performances are really good. Now, Robin Wright is the director of this film. She didn't write it. It was Jesse Chatham and Aaron Dignam. But she's a director of it. So this is Robin Wright's first directorial kind of debut. And there's a lot because she appears in literally almost, I think, every scene, actually. So as far as the directing part of it, I thought the land, as we go into it, that's a character in a sense. That is absolutely a character in a movie. But she actually did a great job by hiring a man named Bobby Bukowski. So he is the cinematographer of this movie, and that goes into my takeaways for this film. Bobby Bukowski does an amazing job just laying out the grandness, the scale of this land and terrain. It's just picturesque, beautiful. It's like a postcard, a live postcard, really, of how beautiful the earth is, and a sense nature in that aspect. The mountains, the clouds, the overlays, the landscape, really, of that's projected. I just thought it was so good that it was overdone. And what I mean by that is that they use that as a crutch in a lot of ways. Just like, if there's not much going on, hey, cut away to the landscape, cut away to the nature. I know the movie's called Land, but there's a little bit too much reliance on kind of showcasing the nature and how beautiful it really is, the area she's in, even though it's scary as shit and freaky because there's no one around, right? So another takeaway from it is it's obviously really great cinematography, and Robin Wright's directorial work with the cinematographer really pays off. But I just thought they kind of overused it at times. We get it. Like, some of these shots were almost identical at times. Oh, it's a daytime shot. Oh, it's a nighttime shot. It's the same landscape though. So I think they got a little bit too wild in a sense with their depiction of the landscape. So less is more, I guess, in that aspect. So in terms of the story and plot, like, I'm going to delve into that right now. Storyline wise, the thing is that what I didn't like about this movie is that Edie's character is not likable. I just don't think she's got very many redeeming qualities or qualities that you would care for as a viewer. Like, I didn't find myself invested in her character at all. Like, clearly this woman's going through a loss. Uh, Basically her life in her eyes is shattered and she has nothing to live for. Mini spoiler here, her son and husband die and there's constant flashbacks of them, but there's no redeeming quality. She's kind of rude. She's isolated herself and dismissive of her like sister who cares about her and other people which you see in flashbacks. Maybe a good friend of hers, not sure, but Emma is the sister that we get to see in the movie that's kind of referenced. But she just wants to be isolated. And when she meets Miguel, she's kind of a taker, not a giver. And there's actually a line in a movie, Miguel, you just give, you know, and yes. And Edie, you take. And that's not a redeeming thing because Miguel's character, on the other hand, is very relatable, very likable character. He's just a good natured man who helps this woman for apparently no reason, which makes me also question, why is he helping her? She's doesn't seem that appreciative. She's very standoffish and she wants to die and not, but yet she uses him in a way to teach her how to fish and hunt, because we see her struggles throughout when she's trying to survive in a wilderness, and she's a city girl that has no skills to survive in a wilderness. That's why she almost dies at one point until Miguel comes and saves her in that sense. And yeah, there's a weird kind of dynamic of like, ooh, you know, he's the Prince Charming coming in to save the day, but there's never a sense of romance or even a sexual attraction between them or anything like that. It's very purely platonic and just friend, almost like a mentor to and a student thing when he's teaching her how to fish and hunt and all these things. But I just didn't find Edie redeemable or a character worth investing into or a character I'd want to invest into. There's not much about her that's, you know, she's grief stricken. She's going through a lot of inner turmoil and pain, but it's not a character you can connect with easily. So I don't know if this was a conscious choice to play it by Robin or not, or this is how she drew up the character in her mind. But it just didn't work. And if your main character is not likable and isn't a villain, you know, it's not like she killed anyone or did anything bad, but it's not likable and doesn't have noticeable redeeming qualities and doesn't make you root for her. I didn't sense root for her. Honestly, some scenes when she was dying, it doesn't matter if she kind of dies or doesn't, even though it might sound harsh, but character-wise, it just didn't matter because you don't care much for this woman, really, the way she just kind of comes off very cold. And that's hard to kind of delve into a movie and connect yourself to a movie where she's such a central piece about her story and her agony. So I thought that was a miss in that part. Another takeaway and observation was that it was incredibly slow. It was snail pace. Like, this movie was only an hour and like 42 minutes, and it could have been 42 minutes for all I care, because it just moved at a really slow pace and things weren't really developing. So she, like, they moved the seasons fast, like, oh, suddenly it's spring, then it's winter she's dealing with, but it felt like forever, you know, even though they tried to move the seasons rather quickly, you know, to see how long she's been there in isolation. But it just doesn't hold enough intrigue or interest, and especially the character doesn't present itself as someone you'd care for. So the movie feels extremely slow paced, and it's like a slow burn that seems repetitive at times. So I didn't like that aspect about it. Not a good things about it. Like I said, the nature looks great. The landscape, the cinematography looks great. It's a really well shot film. It's well acted. It just doesn't have the meat. You know, it's kind of just bones, bare bones right there. It needs the meat for it to be intriguing and interesting or entertaining, and really doesn't have any of those factors in it. So I guess my conclusion, and should you see it, No, I wouldn't see it again. If I had to really do it over, I wouldn't see it. It just doesn't do enough of good things or interesting things or to get your attention. It's just a slow moving burn with really not much going on in a movie. Just a woman trying to get over her grief and and just dealing, you kind of see the struggle and the demise of someone, which is in a sense authentic in that aspect of it. It depends on which perspective you're looking at it. You know, here's a woman who kind of discovers how to live and survive in wilderness, you know, and showing kind of mental fortitude in a lot of ways. But I just don't care. I just don't care enough about that character for it to really matter in the long run. So I'd say pass on this. It's just not worth it at the end. You know, it's not a horrible movie by any means, but it's not good either. It's a really played out, like dragged out drama with a character depiction that's not relatable. So it doesn't connect. So I'd say skip it. Not entertaining enough, not fun enough. I'll be accumulating my ratings down below in the article version of this. But if I'm looking at it, let's kind of, you know, like a final score, what you're looking for, it's like a 50 out of 100. I like to do percentages. So for those of you who like my scores, that's probably it. It's not even average. It's kind of below par. The only thing that stack it up is the acting and the cinematography. But it's nothing really new in any way, and just misses the mark completely. So there's that. And of course, here's the spoiler part and my thoughts on it. So if you don't want to check in anymore, goodbye. Thanks for joining me. Subscribe, like, but I guess the spoiler part would be, yeah. So Miguel, we learn later on, is terminally ill. He kind of goes away and leaves her with a dog. So there's a companion that she gets to get later on, that you kind of feel for the dog more so than her at a lot of points. But so she finally, after like 2 years, walks into town looking for Miguel because she technically doesn't care that he disappeared and doesn't seek him out for any way. But yeah, she comes across him. She's brought to his home, and he's on looks like hospice at that point, and they kind of share some words and memories together. But basically, yeah, this man saved her in a lot of ways, and she finally acknowledges it, how much he meant to her. And she finally maybe slowly turns over the leaf and begins to open up and decide that maybe it's worth living. And we see the final scene, her dialing and calling her sister Emma, and her sister basically being in shock, and then fade to black. So after 2 years, she finally leads people on thinking she's dead or gone, and then finally she gives them a call. It was like super selfish of her character to do that in so many ways. But I mean, what's that meaning? She's turning over a leaf. She's going to go back home, visit Emma. Is she finally going to invest in a phone? Apparently she did, or borrowed someone's to make that phone call. But what's the thing here? That what do we care about even the future of this character, where she didn't give us enough throughout the story to really matter in that aspect? So there's Land for you. This is what I do. I check it out. I'll give you the real raw breakdown of the movie. I wasn't a fan, but maybe to some this will be an inspiring or just an interesting enough character study in that way. But as far as directing, I think she did a good job. Robin Wright did a good job with the directing part and acting. But there's the review for Land. No high expectations for it. So even though the trailer might lure you in some way, maybe, but don't expect anything good to come out of it. So there's that. Please subscribe down below. You know how to do it. Just click the subscribe button. Thank you to all that do. Like, comment, please. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Land and what you think about it. But until next time, I'm out.